Tehuti Ma'at, that means I'm offering you truth. I'm Aust NeferKa. Welcome to the Professor and Priestess talk show. I want to go ahead and before I begin, ask my lovely co-host, Mama Regina, for permission to speak.
Absolutely.
Give thanks. So, welcome. Mama Regina is the professor. I am the priestess. And Mama Regina, I would love if you could do us the honors of just giving a brief introduction to anyone who hasn't been here before, of who you are. But Professor and Priestess talk show, this season, we're talking all about how revolution is the only solution. So, this is episode 5, and we're going to be focused on the pillar of the ancestors and why or how the ancestral presence is guiding us and informing our path to liberation. So, Mama Regina, may you share with our listening audience who you are? And I want to welcome everyone who's here with us live. Feel free to tune in the chat as well.
Okay. I'm Regina Jennings, and I'm an original member of the Black Panther Party for Self-Defense in Oakland, California, even though I was born in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And from that experience with Huey Newton and Bobby Seale, I learned so much about Black people, and I was a teenager then, and it was one of the greatest experiences of my life. It is one that carried me through school because I wasn't a high school dropout, but I was a high school failure because I had left home at around 14 years of age. So I had been on my own for like 2.5 years prior to discovering Huey Newton and Bobby Seale and deciding that Philadelphia could hold me no longer. I had to go out to Oakland, California and help the brothers. I honestly don't know what I thought I would be helping them do, but I decided that they needed my help. And I know that that was an ancestral communication. I know it. I don't even question it. Now, at the time, with the way I was living, I was like, well, this is just a thing to do. Let me just, go out to Oakland and, hang out with the people there in California. But in retrospect, as I got older and realized the decisions that I had made, I knew exceedingly well, with great clarity, that somebody was talking to me, somebody was directing me. And it's not like it was like the good sister priestess Neff, she and I are talking now, and I'm talking to this fabulous audience that's looking at us both. We're so pretty. Yes, Lord have mercy. We look good, Neff. So, in any event, the callings from ancestors, it's not like, I could hear, oh, Regina, I want you to do. No, it's not like that. And I'm directing this to people who really feel that they don't actually hear anything from our departed, or it's not like a voice came to me. It's maybe it was a feeling, but I just knew I had to go. I mean, it was in a way kind of crazy because I went by myself. I had never been on a plane, okay, and I didn't care. I was good and high at the time, so that probably helped, spur my courage. But in retrospect, that was the ancestors because it set me on the path that I'm on now and the path that I have been on since that time. Because it was in that experience with Huey P. Newton and Bobby G. Seale that I absolutely learned to love Black people. I mean, I love Black people. What do you mean? You know, um, but it set me on that historical path of wanting to learn more and more and more and more about our people, about the earth being a planet, about galaxies, about revolution, absolutely. And just about finding my purpose here. So I have found my purpose. I am an elder, and I definitely am a writer. And I've written about 6 books. You should get them. They are excellent. They will help you and anybody that you share them with. I'll show them later. But in fact, that's who I am today. I'm a Black nationalist freedom fighter. I want to help Black people figure out a path or paths as to how they should conduct themselves on Earth. I don't want Black people to remain in a Eurocentric kind of mental construct, whereas they, for example, young people today, and this is a real experience that I recently had. I had a lovely young woman working with me on a project, and she got her first bout of racism. She was transferred to a job, really made a lot of money. You know, she was young. Um, and so she was exceedingly happy. And I was absolutely happy for her. Well, it was her first bout with racism, and she fell completely apart. I mean, literally fell apart. You know, took to her bed and this. I'm like, what the fuck? You know, because I'm thinking about like, wow. I mean, our enslaved ancestors. Look what that. I mean, now I don't want to
It's
be
interesting
insensitive.
how so many people are disconnected from, or maybe I would say sheltered, or yeah, just not, it's like not experiencing it because people can be in their own world,
That's right.
um, and not conscious of what's happening in the collective, or completely in the patrix or the zeitgeist, and just their whole narrative is formulated from the mainstream or just outside thoughts. So they're
Exactly.
just like completely oblivious to what's going on until it comes knocking on their front door. So that is interesting.
Exactly.
But
Exactly.
before we
So,
go deeper into that, Mama Regina,
right.
well, let me let you complete your thought and then I'll.
Oh, I'm pretty much done.
Okay.
Basically, to just put it in one sentence or two, now that I've become an elder, because it's not like, you know that you're going to be an elder. I mean, it just happens, right? And so, one of the things I absolutely want to do with the rest of my physical time on earth is to make sure that everybody younger than me, and even older if they need it, know everything that I know. I want you to know everything that I know so that you could take my wisdom, if you will, and use it in a way that makes sense to you, that will better yourself, your family, and the earth.
Mm-hmm. So give thanks. And for those of you who don't know who I am Aust NeferKa. I'm the mother of Tehuti Ma'at. Tehuti Ma'at is a revolutionary instrument focused on the resurrection of African people through creating a resource mechanism and developing and creating revolutionary institutions, cooperatives in the areas of healing, art, and education. So we are building on the previous movements and continuing the revolutionary work and the foundation that was laid by all of the ancestors before us. So when we say we are our ancestors, we do mean that literally. And we also mean that in the sense of the continuum, that we are continuing the legacy of our ancestors. And for me personally, as a high priestess of ancient Kemetic sacred science, right, ancient African wisdom, I'm also carrying the truth of our cosmic origins. It's interesting right now with a lot of like the New Age movement and a lot of people coming in online or in line to their cosmic nature, right? To our original nature and our consciousness rising on the planet, right? There's a lot of people who are now identifying with being light workers or star seeds or these other terms that are given to us. And what I really like for us to come into consciousness of is the fact that we are the ancient ones who have returned. And granted, everyone is not on the same soul journey, but I know that those who align with this work and align with Tehuti Ma'at have come for this resurrection. And when we look back to our ancient wisdom and we look back to the ancestors and what we carved into stone on temple walls, and the monuments that we literally built and erected that still stand to this day, there were prophecies written on those sacred texts that we are living right now because we knew we would be here. And that is the wisdom that I carry and that I choose to embody in a way for us to be able to live and breathe and see practically how we remove the stains from our mind and create that prophetic reality and transform our conditions, right? Our material, physical conditions, but through taking the higher ground of um, our spiritual battlefield. So I just want to thank you, Mama Regina, as always, for being here and lifting your voice and sharing your wisdom. And I think it's a very grounding presence and energy that you bring. And I think our conversation today is going to be really insightful, especially because I think your books, especially that you have one book in particular that I think really speaks to the essence of what this pillar really represents. So for those who haven't been here for our previous episodes, we've been going through the 11 pillar platform of Tehuti Ma'at in honor of the legacy of the Black Panther Party for self-defense, because it was inspired by and cultivated through critical analysis and really deep reverence for the work that Huey P. Newton and Bobby Seale did in co-founding the Black Panther Party for self-defense as a organization, to a revolutionary organization to bring us forward into this next phase of our revolution, right? So many people know about the civil rights movement, and some people don't even know about the revolution and progression of the civil rights movement into the Black Power movement, because for a lot of people, they were not taught that. And that's a whole nother thing that I think you could speak on, Mama Regina. But in essence, what I want to say is we have to continue to revolve, right? The times are changing. Huey P. Newton and Bobby Seale didn't have social media to contend with. They didn't have a lot of different things that have changed. And the moment that we're in right now requires our presence and requires for us to build further than those who came before us, the same way they had built further than the ones who had come before them. So essentially, when we say we are our ancestors and we're talking about this pillar of the ancestors, we're talking about this innate presence, this ancestral presence. As Mama Regina said, it's not necessarily an actual voice you're going to hear. You know, for some people, they're clairaudient and they can actually, you know, sense and hear that. But it's almost like a quiet whisper. It's really the sound of the heart, because we're talking about a soul connection. We're talking about an eternal connection. When we talk about it's in our blood, right? And we talk about the heart, right? The heart is constantly circulating and pumping the blood. And that communication that we get from the ancestral realm is one that speaks to us in many different ways. It's very unique to each individual person. Now, some people may not acknowledge and accept or even know that it's an ancestral guidance. Some people may feel like it's a divine guidance from the source, from the universe, from the creator, from God. So there is a distinction there that I think is significant. And I'm wondering, Mama Regina, if that's something that you can speak on, because I think that for a lot of people, because there's so much pseudoscience out there about, you know, spirituality and, you know, everything from epigenetics to, you know, metaphysics, how can we have a grounded perspective on how we're interacting with multiple realms and still be grounded in this physical material realm without being limited by it, so that we can tap into that eternal essence of the ancestral guidance?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think that, well, first of all, let me show you this book. And if you can read the title, it says Poetry in the Black Panther Party from Ancestral Memory. morphogenetic fields, that's Western science, to hip hop, that's really Tupac Shakur and Huey Newton. I do a chapter on Tupac and his lyrics, and I compare them to the poetry of Huey P. Now, the ancestral foundation is embedded in us as a people because we were the first people. So, therefore, we had the first ancestors. And quite frankly, our original ancestor was whoever sent us all to Earth. Okay? So, I mean, we are a God people, it's who we are. And in this culture that we have been forced into, and I literally do mean forced, um, our our children and our children's children and their children's children took on a culture that would have separated us, that is the immediate knowledge from our ancestral heritage. So what we have to do, and what Nef does in Tehuti Ma'at, is to bring us back to the original plateau on which we actually were nurtured. Okay. I mean, it's in African culture to recognize and even to nourish, African people, some groups, some African ethnic groups, they literally put out food for their ancestors. Okay. I mean, and this is symbolic, it is a gesture. They know good and well the ancestor isn't going to come forward and gobble up the food. It doesn't work that way, but they're living symbolically. And so this is why they make that kind of a preparation. And we even have rituals. Now, let me kind of bring this closer to the age we're in now. I didn't know it at the time, but clearly Huey Newton and Bobby Seale were receiving downloads, if you will, of ancestral energy, resistance, revolutionary energy that they passed on to us. They knowingly did this, okay? Because they wanted to connect the masses of Black people to the notion of what Malcolm X has called the revolution. So this was ancestral. As I became a PhD, and you have to do a lot of reading, a lot of studying, I found a Panther queen in Africa. I mean, that's what they called her, the Panther queen, okay? Then, even going beyond her, one of Tehuti's wives, those gods, one of Tehuti's wives was Seshat. I and girlfriend wore a panther skin dress. I said hello. And she was like the Naturt of writing, right next to her man, Tehuti. Well, he was really a god, but I'm just playing with the vernacular here. What I'm trying to say is when Huey Newton and Bobby Seale wrote and performed poetry, it wasn't just them. And it wasn't even just the Black arts movement at that time. The last poets come out of there. Neff has talked about them, Obiodun, in our last episode. They were reaching back, far back, thousands of years ago, reaching into that ancestral panther sister wearing goddess, Naturt, who wore panther skin. Okay? And she was associated with writing. In fact, her name, Seshat, there's Sesh right there, who was described. Now you bring that forward to the Panther Queen in, I believe it might have been East Africa, I'm not sure, or West Africa. Anyway, her name was Queen Sarah Unya, and she was a Panther Queen, and she built a Panther town. To get into her town, you walk through the mouth of a panther, a reconstructed panther. And girlfriend was so incredible that when she knew the French and the Germans were coming to eradicate her people, and she had a panther husband too, they were on and off, and because she was queen. Okay, so sometimes, he's a man, he don't want to bow down to her, but that's another story. But they did stay together. But this is my point that I want especially sisters to understand. This sister queen came up with a plan to eradicate some of the most vicious French and German racist dog pigs. And I say that, and I'm not going to apologize, because understand what these white folks did. They went over to Africa to steal us as slaves, and to take all of our resources. So what else am I going to call them? All right. Well, she figured out a way
You don't have
how
to
to
for that.
defeat them. Where am I? Wait. Anyway, she's in this book. And where else is she? Oh, she's even in this book, Queen Sarah Unya. She was known as the Panther Queen. Now,
I that
how am
first.
I relating that? I'm relating that to Huey and Bobby, as Neff is now relating that to Tehuti Ma'at. Hello, there it is, the ancestors, full circle during this time.
I say you said a lot of really um, lifting things that lifted a couple of different things from me. First of all, let me shout out if you are here with us live, tune in to the chat. Feel free to ask us any questions, make any comments. Welcome, Brother Wale, and we have Brother Jadorian in the house. Welcome. It's always great to have our brothers here and active
Yes,
chat. So just we'd love to see that you're here. It's a live talk show, so the benefit of being here live with us is you get to engage and inform the conversation. So when you were speaking about the offerings, the thing that came up for me really strongly was to talk about how one, when we look at so many different traditions, right? You can go into a nail shop and they're going to have a shrine. You can go into an Indian shop. They're going to have a shrine for their ancestors, right? The way that they're rooted in their culture is very significant, right? Because I forget who always says this, but our culture is our weapon, right? Our culture is our protection. Our culture is beyond the tools of culture. I know that Baba James Smalls usually talks about defining culture in a very specific way that I actually really deeply appreciate because most people think of culture and they think of the tools of culture like dance and the arts and all of that. But really, the culture is our cosmology. It's our story, our origin, our inception. How do we define our existence? That is our culture. So when we talk about Black culture, and we're talking about that Black culture with the emphasis on that vibration of lack, right? What has happened after we come through the Ma'afa, after we have gone through this degenerate cycle and the enslavement of our ancestors and all of this treachery, that culture is literally an ingrowth of European colonial imperialism. And we have to be clear on that because there's some aspects of our original culture that are there that are obviously going to always fuel us because it's in our blood, right? But where is the inception of our idea of who we are and our existence? Are we adopting the evolution theory in terms of how we see our cosmology and our origins? Because that's part of culture. Anytime you get these philosophies like YOLO, you only live once, right? It's coming through a tool of culture, but it's inculcating, it's injecting an idea, an ideology that is not in alignment with our original culture of knowing that actually our spirit is eternal. And yes, you will live again, right? So it's a very different culture. So I want to really bring us to the core of what culture is because our art, our music, our dance, the things that we create are tools of culture. So that's why we see the weaponization of music and entertainment, right? Theater, right? Because theater was a huge part of our original culture pre-colonization, right? Our ancient culture was full of ritual, and ritual was what? Theater, right? It was us actually putting on these masks and doing
that's
these
right.
dances and acting out these scenes. So yeah, we have to be very aware of that, right? Because it's being weaponized against us. It's not entertainment, it's weaponry. So when we're talking about going back to our roots and we look at how all these other cultures and traditions, they're still rooted in their spirituality and their tradition. They have their shrines, right? But
Mm-hmm.
where are many of us in Western religions, whether it's Islam or Judaism or even the Eastern traditions, like but to some extent they're closer to the source of our original culture
Mm-hmm.
and our original cosmology when you go closer to the East. But especially with Christianity, even though everything has its origins in Africa, and we can go to the source, especially in Kemet, because it's so well documented. We can see the source of these spiritual traditions. They're so bastardized and they've been corrupted so much that the core, the heart of it is rotten. And when I say that respectfully, I want us to look at the reality that when people go to church and they go and give their tithes and their offerings, they don't find nothing weird about that. However, if you talk about giving an offering to your ancestors, them same people will look at you like you're crazy,
Mm-hmm.
right? And it's very important for us to look at that specifically as an example of how far we've strayed. Because when we look at our, why would we give offerings of grains, of food, right? You weren't giving everything. It's just like when you go to church and you give 10%, right? It's you were just giving a portion of what you have because you're operating from a space of abundance and you're giving gratitude and you're acknowledging that that's an energy exchange. The same way that money is an energy exchange that the church is going to use to run itself, right? Same way in the temples, right? That's what would happen with the granaries and all of that. So I think it is important for us to try to make some connection points to our modern society and our ancestral, roots, because obviously we're not going to go and just create. I said this in another episode, but we're not just trying to go and create what we had ancestrally. We have to revolve it, right? We're in a different moment, and it requires a different expression. But at the core, our values are what we want to keep whole, and that's why we started with pillar one being Ma'at. So if you didn't watch that episode, I highly recommend you watch that episode. That's the episode that's called the balance of the sexes. Now, Mama Regina, I feel like so you mentioned Tehuti and Shishat. I think with our original culture, right? I want to bring us into something that's less easy, closer to us right now, right? In terms of because like when we're going ancient, we're going like way back. But even with the Adinkra symbol system of the Akan, right, in West Africa, you have the symbol of Sankofa. And I think the symbol of Sankofa is the perfect symbol for this particular pillar and why the ancestors are a key pillar of our movement for liberation. Because Sankofa is literally going back to
To
bring
come
forward.
forward. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So maybe you can share, because I don't know if everybody has seen the symbol of Sankofa or knows the symbol of Sankofa, but for those who are not, sometimes it literally looks like a heart, and that's literally the symbol that has inspired so much um, architecture. And you can even see like a lot of the iron work still has that expression,
Mm-hmm.
and that's because that was inspired by the iron work of West Africa. That is, unfortunately many people don't know, but you can go to many museums, you can see the iron work from Benin, and there's so much value that we have in our culture that unfortunately many of us are not aware of. But for those who have done a little bit of ancestral reclamation of Sankofa and gone back, we see the value that we have. That Sankofa, when it's shown in its other symbol, is a goose that its feet is facing forward, but so its body's facing forward, but its head is turned back and it has that egg
Yes.
in its mouth, representing the future, right? Because the egg is going to birth and hatch the next generation.
Mm-hmm.
So it's going back to bring forward
To come
for
forward. That's right.
what we need and what's of value. So I wanted to touch on that because our legacy, when we talk about our ancient legacy, it still continues because we're talking
Exactly.
about cultural orientation. We're talking about a connection to nature, and nature is so it's the most stable thing, right? It's we're talking about when we say ma'at, we're talking about cosmic order. So that's why when you talk about Tehuti and him having these consorts, right? I always like to tell people ancestrally, we have to look at the fact that these were not gods and goddesses in the context that we've been trained to look at that, right? Because we see them as deities and we see them as something outside of us. And I feel it's very important for us to put respect on the scientific aspect of our culture, which is the fact that these were seen as principles and cosmic forces of nature. There's a difference when you start talking about, you know, Tehuti, for example, and it's being perceived in this mythical sense as a god. It's not respected the same way as we're talking about science and you're reading a science book and it's talking about the atom being the smallest, you know, known measurement of energy, right? But that atom is literally coming from the word atum, which they also told us is a god, right? But what? No, atum was a personification of that same concept. But when we look at it from a linear context, because we've been programmed to think linear through the Eurocentric paradigm, we can value that more than we value seeing a symbol of Amun as a ram or Amun as a man with the two things representing on his crown. Because for us to look at that as gods and goddesses, right, these energies as gods and goddesses, we now look at them as something outside of us, and we also look at it as something that I feel most people don't look at it with the same seriousness and respect. So I like to orient people to think about these energies as divine forces and principles. They're scientific terms, really, truly. When we're looking at nature, we're looking at it scientifically. So Tehuti is universal law. It's literally the order. His complement being Ma'at is the order of the universe, and he is what keeps that in account, right? It keeps it accountable through law and certain, you know, the law of polarity, the all the different laws that we have, whether we're looking at, you know, Isaac Newton and all these other Einstein. I like to bring people to the African context for that. There is a doctor by the name of Dr. Gabriel Oyibo who literally created the equation that Einstein was looking for throughout his entire life. Dr. Gabriel Oyibo created the Grand Unified Theorem, which is also called Daggett, God Almighty's Grand Unified Theorem. Because what? There's really only one law within a universe or multiverse of interconnectedness. But the European mind could only look at parts and pieces. The African mind was able to synthesize that all into a whole. So these are ways that we can see our ancient wisdom still exists now. And I believe Dr. Oyibo is actually from the occupied territory known as Nigeria. So it's a continuum, right? And that all is in our blood. So I want to, well, let me actually look at some of these comments we have here. You will see your ancestors to another teacher who definitely puts it into more perspective. Well, I think that that's one of those things that's always up for debate because some people say that Jesus doesn't exist. Some people say that Jesus is a historical figure. I'm not going to really get into that because for me, I like to focus on our historical um, or ancestral wisdom that is documented. And I like to keep it grounded because now we even have like people talking about, I don't know, Anunnaki and all these different, um, you know, other theories of our ancestry and where we come from and extraterrestrials. And sometimes it's very important, as spiritual as I can get and as cosmic as I can get, I try to keep us grounded so that we can focus on what unifies us and what gets us to the source of the point of what we need in order to liberate our spirits and our minds. Um, I prefer the symbol of aquabins to the effect of preparedness. Are you familiar with that, Mama Regina?
No, I am not.
Okay, welcome, Material Lord. Unfortunately, we're not familiar with that symbol, but I will definitely look into that symbol as well. Um, but yes, Mama Regina. So going back to bring forward to the future, are there other ways that you can see us taking this ancient wisdom and applying it in contemporary times and contemporary context? What about
I
like
think that
in the
that
same?
that, that one of the things that young people of today need to look at is, of course, ancient principles, um, ancestral memory, but place it within, I guess, a digital context that young folks have grown up on. Now, one of the things that I absolutely believe in that has disturbed our ancestral memory is the separation of young people today from our own history. We can't necessarily repeat, and we shouldn't, or try to just make remnants of yesterday today, but we have to have that foundation. I mean, this is why there's a mother and a child. And in just about in every religion, there is a Madonna and a child. All right. And you know that comes straight out of Kemet. And what does the mother do? Now, the father's around too, he's to protect, but it is the mother that transmits the culture, the way of knowing, the way of living to the child. Now, when we look at today's scenario and the, I guess, disjuncture within Black families that comes from being owned for more than 400 years by very demonic people, and they're still demonic. Now, Neff mentioned Atum, which of course relates to Adam, ATOM, the atom, you know, which relates to our cells. We have 50, I think it's 50 million cells inside of us. But look what Western society did with the knowledge of the atom. They made a bomb. They made a bomb. They made a goddamn bomb. And I'm cursing on purpose. They took that invisible, most potent knowledge to figure out how to kill more people. And most of the people that they want to kill are people of color. You dig? So it's important, right? Good book, good. Hold that sucker up, Neff. That's Ani, right? Yes. We have to know where we are, and I'm specifically speaking to parents now because you have the children. Cut the television time. Cut it. All right. I'm saying cut it now. If you really disappear it, but I won't go that far. I won't go that far. That might be a bridge too far. But do cut it. You be the culture for your child. Your husband, the father, let him be the culture for the child. All right. Right now, young Black men are killing each other at a rate that is very worrying. Now, why would another young Black man kill another young Black man? Why would he do that? And that's self reflection. Then that shows you there's a hatred there. There's a betrayal there. There's a such an intense hurt that they want to blast their own image. And this is our young people, the youth that will bring more people to the planet. So, we are in crisis right now. And I think that and this is just one way of contributing to solving that crisis is to connect young Black people to their history, to ancestral memory, to our culture. In some African ethnic groups, they had a time. Okay, it would normally be like a celebrations, rituals of some kind that lasted for 7 days, sometimes 2 weeks, right? And during this time period, there was a king, of course. And during this time period, the subjects of the king, right, the regular people, were allowed to insult the king. They were allowed to insult their neighbors. So any kind of pent up anger that people might have had during the year, they could get it out. You know, it doesn't stay in them and fester. And the king would just laugh it off because it was a time that was in our culture where the common man and woman could release any pent up anger, any pent up resentment against either the king or the royal family or their neighbors. And no, and once they, talk, I'll say bad or down to the king, he laughed because he knew it was a time for that. And they also knew that once resentment was out of the body, okay, then the body then could not only heal, but it could be joyful. All right, because the common person has spoke his or her mind without any punishments. So then the king, the royal family, could rule the people, all right, in a way that would help the people to be content because they had their say. Now, just like Neff and I are having this conversation, we are releasing what is inside of us. And those who are listening are taking in our language. And our language is designed to heal and to help and sometimes to bring joy and laughter and to encourage. When Neff says, well, if you hear, let us know, you can ask a question. When you ask a question or even just make a comment, you are releasing what is inside of you. And that's a good thing because everybody, and I mean everybody on earth wants to be heard. Okay? I believe the plants even want to be heard. Mosquitoes will let you know what they coming for. I mean, the insect, we all want to be in, and we actually are in a communication one with the other. And so that kind of releasing, this is what language is about. And our ancient ancestors knew that. All right. That's where writing comes from. When you write something down,
Yeah.
go ahead, Neff.
No,
Go
I'm
ahead.
so went there about language, and but I want you to continue because what you're on is like what I wanted to move us into is really talking about language and looking at the essence of culture and why we're in the position that we're in, why it's important for us to go back and use our ancestral vibrations for
That's
the
right.
things we're speaking on. Why I'm a firm advocate for us shifting our language around divinity because that vibration, God, is
Yes.
a vibration that was given to us. So every
Yes.
time we put a vibrational, right, it's just like the power of Jesus. The power of Jesus exists because that vibration has power. People have poured their energy into that vibration.
That's
They have
right.
poured energy out of them and externally to a deity. And that's the same way people engage with the concept of God as if it is external. But the concept that we had and the term that we had for God or for the creator, for the divine force, the essence, everything that is and nothing is nter, neter, or nter, because actually our tongue is so colonized. As my elder, my spiritual father, Baba Heru says, that D and that T sound is more of a click. So it's nter. So it's us awakening our vibrations. When we go back to those ancient words, you feel the resonance of the vibration. And it's deep, it's strong. Literally, the words sound strong. And the words in English sound weak because
Hmm.
Malcolm, I love rise and power to our beloved ancestor Malcolm X because
Yeah,
he's one of our pillars of the ancestors. We have two ancestors that rise as pillars for each of our pillars, and for the ancestors, we have Omawale Malcolm X and we have Harriet Tubman. And Malcolm X always said that English is the language of liars, and
that's
it's very
right.
important for us to recognize how this language this culture we're adopting, and its foundation being language and vibration, right? Because the whole universe our existence on this realm, the physical world, everything that we touch that is physical is a manifestation of vibration. All the
That's
colors
right.
that we are a manifestation of vibration. So the words that we're using in English, I love to use that word lie specifically. You have
Hmm.
one vibration that can be interpreted in many ways. What does that do? It stifles your creative power because your words create your reality. That's why we had declarations of Ma'at, right? You declare these things because you're co-creating when you use your vibration, when you use your words. That's the power of your voice, right? That's why it's so important to bring those things from out of us, from inside of us out, right? Through the written word, through the spoken word. That's our culture. That's part of our legacy, right? That is Tehuti. That's the essence of what the science and the principle of Tehuti is. It's
And
expression, it's connection, it's
and
communication.
you know, the poet Ntozake Shange, she said that English is the language that she grew up to hate herself in.
Yeah,
English is the language that all of us as Black people grew up to hate ourselves in. There is nothing in the English language that relates to people of color, and particularly Black people, that is nourishing, loving, godlike.
I always think it's very interesting because there's a lot of, because I also speak Creole, Cape Verdean Creole. Criolu, there are a lot of words that I can't say in English. Or even when I try to teach people Meduneter, the what they know, most people know from the Greek interpretation, the hieroglyphs. When I try to teach people those vibrations, I have to use 30 English words to express one African concept that in our ancient language has one vibration. So when you look at that word lie, I could be talking about lie like a falsehood, something that's not true, a lie. I could be talking about lie like lie down. I could be talking about lie, the chemical that's in here at relaxer, right? So it's three different things, but it's one vibration. So that's what I mean when I like when he said that English was the language of liars, it's quite literally like the language itself is, it's not powerful. It's not a strong language. And I'm not even going to get into linguistics, but if you really get into linguistics, you'll see why. I grabbed the book Yorubu though because I wanted to read. I love the fact that she used, because I was going to go into language. It's very powerful because she uses a lot of African words, Kiswahili terms, and she defines them for the purpose of this African centered critique of European cultural thought and behavior. This book is really essential. It's very, very important. I think it has to be paired with the Blueprint for Black Power. And they're a great, like, masculine and feminine, like, embodiment of what we need as far as moving forward. Now, because she's using these African terms and she's defining them, she's coming from a position of power. Even though she's using a colonized tongue, she's using English, right? We're all using English right now, so it is what it is. But how do we claim power within that, right? Because we have to transition out of where we are right now. Language creates unity, and that doesn't mean we all have one language. When you look at the continent, even in ancient times, there were many, many languages,
That's right.
but we were so vibrationally aligned that, to be honest with you, I feel there's a lot of languages that I don't know, but I can communicate with people. I've been to places where I can't speak the language and been able to communicate and comprehend what the person is transmitting to me with their vibration. But most of us are so, we're not connected in our ecology. We're so tapped into this vortex of the digital world that we can't connect to the natural field of energy and the natural current and network of energy to be able to commune in that way. That's what language provides us with. So language doesn't have to be a divisive thing. It can be a unifying thing. It's all about perspective and the power of definition. As we like to use Huey's definition for power, power is the ability to define phenomenon and make it act in a desired manner. So what she's done here, she's used Kiswahili to define the terms of the conversation so that we're operating from a position of power. So she talks about the word asili. And what asili is, it is the developmental germ or seed of a culture, right? So when you talk about them taking the atom and creating death from that, because that's their asili,
That's
right?
right.
The cultural seed is death and decay. It's the
Mm-hmm.
energy of set, the energy of gravity, right? And we talked about this before. So previous episodes, if you haven't watched other episodes, I do recommend that you tap into some of the other conversations we've had. But she also says it is the cultural essence, the ideological core, the matrix of a cultural entity, which must be identified in order to make sense of the collective creation of its members. Okay? That's the affiliate. We're talking about going right to the womb, right? And that's what we fail to do most of the time. We don't want to get deep. We don't want to go to the root. And that's where we have to go. We have to go to the root. That's what the ancestral presence allows us to do because we're operating in many realms. And there is a natural hierarchy. And it's not in the context of the linear Eurocentric paradigm that we've been trained to think in. That hierarchy is natural, just like lions eat deers, right? It's not that the lion is better than the deer, right? So when you have hierarchy, the European has taught us to think of that in the context of one being better than the other, right? But that's not the essence of hierarchy. So when we're talking about layers, right? There's layers of energy. It's almost like an outer circle, right? So we're existing in space and time, but the ancestors don't exist in space and time.
That's right.
They exist on this outer realm. And there's other realms beyond that, right? There's this infinite realm. But for the sake of our conversation being grounded and practical, there's a reason why sometimes, you know, ancestors can speak to you by something just dropping on the floor and shattering. You know, because here when you break glass, we say that you cut something, you stop something from happening, or something. It means something. Everything means something. When we go to our cultural affiliates, like African cultural affiliates, everything has meaning. We don't have a concept of coincidence or like serendipity. Everything happens for a reason, and
That's right.
everything has meaning, and everything has purpose. So you give attention to those details. And that's the energy cycle that we're in right now. It's all about the details. I just did a live stream with Danny on the divinity is in the details. And that's a good one also for people to go and look at because it really elaborates on the energy signature we're in right now and moving through. But that being said, I do feel that culture, that language is a very, very significant expression of culture because essentially it's what's connecting the spiritual and the material is our vibration, our words, our ability to speak and create. Um,
Exactly. And because I'm an elder, I have seen vast amounts of time go by. So I've been able to actually analyze, oh, this was then and this is now. And like last week, a person reached out to me who had once, many years ago, threatened to blow my house up and beat my ass. I'm just quoting. This is what this little hussy said. And this is a family member. All right. All right. Now, for a couple days back then, years ago, I was a little worried. I was like, because I'm not always home and, my children were there and all that. And I said, I hope, because I knew she was crazy. So I was like, I hope that she don't really carry through. But then I said, the hell, I ain't going to think about it. All right. So I have not talked with this person. Mhm. Last week, didn't this person call me? Ask my advice? invited me to her home, I started not to eat her meal because I said, "Now, she is still a little crazy." But I did. So I didn't get sick. It's like, what? Why am I telling you this? You young people, and I consider young people right up into the 50s. Some of y'all that are in your 60s is still a little, you know what I mean? Need a little help too. Let the universe, okay, guide you. Okay? Believe that chances will come back around. When something does not go your way, and I can list many examples. Like a sister friend, she wanted a signature from me for something. And I said, "Oh, sure, yeah. This is years, maybe what is it, 2007, I think it was. Oh, I said, "Oh yeah, I'll help you do that. I'll help you do that. Sure, come on by." She stood me up. She stood me up. So this is a sister. So you give people chances. So she makes another date with me to get a signature. She stands me up again. Recently, within this last year, she comes to me with the same proposition, but I've had time to think about it. See, I hadn't really thought about it then because I just want to help Black people. I really do. That's my heart. But I've had time to think about what this child is asking of me. And I was like, "Nah, blood, no, I'm not signing. What? Let me see more papers on this thing." Now, what am I saying here? First of all, if she had have been professional and principled years ago, she'd have got my signature. And she could have went on and do what she wanted to do, with my, blessings. She stood me up twice. I was very annoyed, okay? But in hindsight, when I had more time to think about it, okay, when my angels made her stand me up, and time went by, I said, "You know what? I'm not signing this. I'm not signing this." You know, and so we're still in a bit of what can I say? I don't want to say we're debating because I don't debate. I've already told her my conditions for signing, and she has to fulfill them, or she will not get my signature. But this is the point that I want to make here. When something seems to be in your way, when something seems to be blocking you from what you think you should do, honor that blockage, honor that stop. Okay, you're not on this earth alone. There are energies and principles above all of us that are at times guiding us. Okay, so what might seem like, wow, that didn't go through. Oh, don't go there. Don't. It wasn't for you. There's something else for you that's even better than what you thought that you should have at that particular time in the past. Just watch how the wheels will turn. I'm absolutely shocked at some of the things that I have seen turn around. And I feel really fortunate and blessed that I'm able to live as long as I have because I have seen things change for the better when people actually thought, "Oh God, this is awful. I can never recover from this. This addiction is just, I gotta have that." No, you don't. And if you apply the right principles, you'll be okay with whatever happens in your life because you will be valuing your life as a part of the divine. And this is where we want to live. I absolutely want to live in the divine. All right. The minute I wake up, I go to God. I go straight to God before I get out of the bed so I can make sure that I go to God. All right. And when I retire in the evening, it's the same thing. I go back over my day and I go to God. Okay. This is, I believe, how we lived once in the ancient of days, and I know in African culture, there were times, I don't think it was every day, but there were times when parents would in fact wake their children up before dawn so that they could see Ra come in, so that they could see the sun come in and go from darkness to light. And these are the kind of things I think strongly that we have to share with our young people, because this is not a culture of God. I don't even care if you're Christian, Muslim, Buddha. Atheism comes out of Europe. That's where it comes from. They're good for, well, just like today, you're sent to Earth. You're a boy. You got, I don't want to say what the word I use for it, because Neff told me a better word. But if you're a boy, you have a you know what. I forgot what the word was that Neff used. It's better than
And then
I
no.
use. Okay, and see, isn't that better than the P word I was going to use? Anyway, you come here, there it is. You see it.
Like
You see it, right? There it is. But then this culture tells you, oh, you could change that. So in other words, you could change God. You could tell God what to do. God must have been wrong to send you here with all of that testosterone and everything else. You see? So you are a God in the negative sense of the way, because as Neff was saying earlier, we do have God within us.
mm-hmm.
It's a matter of if we, use it and wake it up. But I'm talking about becoming a God in a negative sense.
Yeah, because we can also embody demons. That's why people get possessed. It's about your frequency. It's about your vibration. So with a higher frequency, that's why purification is so important. Detoxification.
And
They
it
want
is.
to keep us in this density, because remember what we're dealing with energetically, spiritually. When we talk about what the European embodied um, in this expression of exploitation, death, and disorder, is Set. Set is literally the word that they took Satan from. So but again, scientific term. This isn't a character or a caricature. It's scientific that it's the density, it's the principle of death and decay. It's the principle of, which is necessary, right? In this realm, it's necessary, it's gravity. So in our mythology, you cannot destroy Set, right? You destroy Apep. Now, Apep is seen as an unnecessary evil, right? But I'm not going to go too deep into the mythology right now. But there's one point where after Heru, overpowers Set, gets him in the chokehold, probably ready to kill him. His mother doesn't allow him to kill him because she says that it's necessary for life to exist. There has to be death, right? So that's what creates our cycles. Because again, it's coming back around to our values. When you said that earlier, that's what I thought about. Was we valued life, right? We valued, but our perspective of life was this regenerative, cyclical nature, right? That's why it's like what goes around comes back around, right? And that allows you to have trust as well, right? So you're not in this space of, you can't trust nobody. It's a dog eat dog world. Every man for himself. Individualism, right? It's completely on the opposite side. So our values are key. We have to return back to our values that are aligned with our cosmology, that are aligned with our culture. And even what you were saying about signing the contract is interesting. You said that. First of all, I hope nobody's signing contracts during Tehuti retrograde, because Tehuti is the energy of Mercury, right? Because as they say, Mercury, the energy sphere of Mercury, the way it influences our planet is it influences the mind. That's why it's expression, communication, connection. When Mercury is having that optical illusion where it looks like it's retrograding backwards before it moves forward again, it's a period where it's not wise, it's not recommended to sign any contracts or agreements, or you might have travel issues or technological issues, because this energy literally governs all communication and connection and transportation and expression. So when you said that, I thought about that. I was like, yeah, good thing, no signing nothing right now. But on top,
I gotta ask you, Neff. Okay, we really got to get clarity on here, because there's a couple things that I was supposed to sign, or I was thinking of signing, but you're saying that until September 15th, was it?
Yeah.
Or, and then after September 15th,
Yeah.
it's
And then
cool.
I just emailed out the retrograde care guide. So for those people who are members of Tehuti Ma'at, which you can always join Tehuti Ma'at by going to tehutimat.org/join to join the Tehuti Ma'at militia. But for those who are members of the militia, um, at the Empire rank and above in the Galaxy rank, if you're in the Galaxy rank, you actually get a retrograde care kit that we put out every season when Tehuti is in retrograde. And we cultivate it and craft very specific handmade spiritual goods and tools that align you with the energy. So the guidebook, though, does explain the energy and the specific influence of that particular cycle. So this summer retrograde that we're in right now is a very specific energy signature. And yes, it's until the 15th. So in the guidebook, in the beginning part, though, it does explain all of the general themes of Tehuti retrograde in there, and why signing contracts and doing certain things during retrograde is not recommended. And then on top of that, I was thinking as you were speaking about the aspect of Tehuti that is that cyclical thing, right? Because you were talking about what goes around comes around, and trusting the ancestral guidance
Yes.
and the divine guidance of life, because it's our life that's the thing. Life is
Yes.
speaking. If we want to make it simple, we don't want to make it spiritual, and we want to make it real scientific, real practical, real grounded, it's life. Trust your life. So you're trying to do something, your ego wants you to do it. And our ego is necessary for certain things. As we said, set is necessary for certain things in its proper place. Our ego allows us to survive. But we're talking about, we don't want to move in survival. We want to be thriving, right? We want to be living and thriving. So the ego has to be in its proper place. And the ego comes out when you need it to protect yourself, right? But ultimately, when we look at the energy of Tehuti and we look at like the cyclical nature of how things move, it's a spiral. And many people know this as what's called the fingerprint of God, or the golden mean, right? There's a literal mathematics to everything in the universe and the way that it grows in this spiral pattern. And many people know it as the Fibonacci sequence, because Fibonacci, who actually, again, learned in Kemet, literally, these Europeans would go literally sit at the feet of
That's
Africans
right.
and learn in our
That's
temples, our
right.
universities, which were our temples, and then go back. And now all of a sudden, they're the ones who discovered math and science and all these things, even though they went to school in Kemet to learn these things. So it's important for us to know that that's the legacy of Tehuti, is that mathematics. So it's the mathematics of the universe. Um, but I wanted to come back in here because this is a perfect question that actually leads to the next part of the conversation that I want to make sure we have before we close out, which is agriculture. The question is, so would you posit culture or practical solutions are answers to our problems? Which I am going right to the legacy of agriculture, because what we have to recognize is that everything that we have right now that we consider the foundation of civilization, the mathematics, the architecture, the sciences, they only exist because of agriculture. Emphasis on the culture in agriculture, right? Because even the legacy of Kemet and the origins of Kemet is that Aust and Asar, the first leaders of Kemet, came with the knowledge of the previous civilization, which was, interestingly enough, where I'm positioned right now on the Atlantic. The civilization that many people know as Atlantis, but we don't know if that's what we call that land, right? Or that particular civilization. But they continued the legacy, and they brought to the Hapi Valley, right? That river, Hapi, which we know as the Nile. They brought the tradition of agriculture, and they taught the people how to cultivate the land. And this was very significant for us to come out of being hunters and gatherers, to come back around to a technological age and to rebuild humanity
based on agriculture because we had to be able to create surplus of food so that we could stay in one place. Now, when we're able to stay in one place, that's what allows you to observe scientifically anything because science is observation. So you have to be in one particular place for enough time to be able to observe. I mean, even when you think about astronomy, the level of astronomy that we had, when you look at the astrology of the Greeks, it pales in comparison because we had a 26,000 year calendar. Okay, so you're talking about looking for millennia observing
Incredible.
and cycles.
Incredible.
Incredible, right? So that's the type of precision and consistency we're talking about. Even being here, when I first stayed here for 3 years, it was the first time I was able to grasp the cosmic wisdom of the sun because the mountain here, that's the backdrop, Ma'at Mountain, literally stands in the center. And when the sun rises right in the center, it's during the equinox. It's either in the spring equinox or the autumn equinox. And then I started observing the sun start to move and rise closer over there each time. And then at the solstice, winter solstice, it transitions and it comes back to center to the equinox. And then it goes and the sun's rising all the way over here now. And I'm like, oh, okay, I get what's happening. I get how we're literally moving as a planet within our solar system and how the sun is in. But if I did not stay here for 3 years and observe that, I wouldn't have been able to really connect with that. You know what I'm saying? So there's an aspect of that stillness and that presence, right? And obviously I'm farming, so that in itself, but the agriculture is directly connected with the astronomy, right? Because another African principle, as above, so below, right? We've seen that consubstantiation of everything being reflected and connected, right? That divine symmetry, right? So these are all principles and values that I feel like can be practically applied because that's our legacy. Our legacy is land. So again, going back to Malcolm X, revolution, his quote, revolution is based on land. Land is the basis of all independence. Land is the basis of freedom, justice, and equality. So what is the land for? As humans, what do we need? We need the land provides us with sustenance in order to survive, in order to live and exist on the planet. Land provides us with the trees that provide us with the oxygen that we need to breathe, right? So all of that to me is very practical. We have to return back to the land. We have to return to our legacy. We have to be self-sustaining. We have to return to our sovereignty. And the only way that we can do that is to return to that ancestral wisdom. Even when we were talking at the very beginning of the conversation, you were talking about listening to that still voice. And it's not necessarily something you hear, it's just your intuition, it's your instinct. It's that what people say is like, you know, that fight, flight, or freeze response, right? Depending on where you are and how you are in your body, right? Because if you're, you know, intoxicated, taking drugs in your body, like you might be tapping into a whole nother frequency, very low frequency at that, right? you on demon time. That's different. Ancestrally, you have to be at a certain frequency to be able to tune yourself to that guidance. And I think Harriet Tubman was a beautiful, beautiful example of how that was done because she literally was being guided to move
Yes.
people out of those plantations, out of those, I don't even want to call them plantations. There's another word, I don't know, concentration camps. I don't know what we want to call them, but you know, because I do think about that very often because of the atrocities that took place on that land. You know, and it's like, yeah, they're plantations, but like that's their definition. That's
Good.
within their narrative of what it
Right.
was. For just farms, there were plantations. Like, so I'm just saying, those are things I feel like we should put up for discussion. and
Mm-hmm.
define for ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
But are
Mm-hmm.
there any other practical ways or practical solutions to our problems that you feel come from our culture that you want to speak on to answer the brother's
Well, sure. One thing, let me find it. This just came to me. Can everybody see it? It's called Our Grandparents Were Members of the Black Panther Party. And do you see the beautiful children on the cover? All right. My mind has been blown since I was introduced to this book a couple weeks ago. Our grandparents were members of the Black Panther Party. Now, let me tell you how life works. This would be a great example. Someone sent this to me and said, "You must read this." Well, once I saw the title, I said, "Well, absolutely. What?" And you see how gorgeous these children are. I hope I'm getting them in the frame here. I see them giving a power sign. Our grandparents were members of the Black Panther Party. So I got the book. I'm reading it. I'm reading it. I'm reading it. And do you know I'm in it? And did not know I was in it. These children came to a presentation I was giving, me and another Panther, Ethel Paris. They took our picture and they put it in this book. Now, better than that, and I'm not promoting this book because I'm in it either, people. So don't go there. What I love about this book is that Huey and Bobby's message will live on. And it's written from the children's perspective. This just came out in 2023. Now, even more significant, it says our grandparents were members of the Black Panther Party. I knew their grandparents. I didn't even know when I was reading through it. I said, wait a minute. That can't be. I mean, I actually knew their grandparents and did not know that I knew them, in my first reading of this. Because what had happened, like you changed your name, Neff. I don't think you were born with the name that you had chosen now. So the grandparents in this text, their names were changed. So at first, I didn't get it, right? But the last time I saw their grandmother, we were both Panthers. Lord have mercy. She was so young and she was wonderful. Just such a sweet girl. Okay. Because some of the sisters, they were a little hard. Maybe I was among them. I don't know if I was hard or something. I don't know. That's for somebody else to judge. God damn it. Anyway, the last time I was with their grandmother and we were sent on a Panther mission, she had just learned to drive, Neff. Girlfriend was driving all up on the curb, and I was like, but I was cool. I didn't care. I knew we were gonna get there. But she had just learned to drive. So I'm like, that's such I my mind was blown. So I got in touch with the author of this book and I met her today. Okay? And she said, You knew you knew my husband's grandma? I said, Yes. I mean it was, and she's dead now. She's an ancestor now. It was just the most touching coming together, to meet this young woman who encouraged her children, took them to Black events, and encouraged them. And you're going to love this next part, Neff. Encouraged them to write about their grandmother. Lord have mercy. And in their writing about their grandmother, they were writing about me. Guess what else these children do, Neff? They have beehives. These children are beekeepers. And their mother, yes, their mother, okay, they sell their honey. Now I'm never going to get honey again from Whole Foods, not ever. And she encouraged her children. They put together another book called The Beekeepers. I don't have that yet. because I just met this sister
Love
today.
it.
So isn't it, look how all of this.
Look, I want to start doing beekeeping.
Okay, I'll definitely get one and send it on to you. Yeah, this is an example of history coming back around. I didn't know any of this. I didn't expect any of this. Somebody sent me this book and said, "Oh, you must get this." And I was thinking, yeah, absolutely. Our grandparents were paying. Oh, I thought that'd be fabulous. And I'm in the. I mean, if any of you are stressing about what is not happening in your life, hold on to our ancestors. Hold on to the divine ones that sent us here. Hold on to your courage. Don't give in to the sickness, to the poison that is in this society. Hold on to everything that you want and watch it come to you. So that's what, I just wanted to say, Neff, because I've seen it as near as today. There it was, history coming back around.
I'm so glad that you shared that, and even bringing it back around to the beekeeping, because in terms of practicality, like, what are the first of all, there's a quote by Nana Amos Wilson. He goes, "I could tell how serious someone is about solving the problems of Black people by the amount of time they give you to talk about the problems facing Black people." And it was interesting because, yeah, it was all about time, how we have to step into our own, we have to step out of this linear time paradigm and all of that. That's why we created Navigating Eternity. And for those who don't know, Navigating Eternity is available now as an online course that you can take via Tehuti Ma'at Academy. So if you want information about that, you could always reach out to us. But when he said that, the thing that struck me, though, was just how we have a lot of problems that we're not really clear on the source and the core of it. That's why we keep doing these little band-aid solutions. So the things that we're expressing are holistic solutions. So the problems that face us is, yes, we need to create narrative. We need to define our reality. So writing books is a practical solution. But also beekeeping, the agriculture is a practical solution to what? The plethora of diabetes and heart disease and all of the different disorders and diseases that are killing us. When we're talking about, even honestly, even the sexual confusion has a lot to do with our biochemistry and the fact that there's so much hormones and chemicals poured into the food. So agriculture and us returning back to our organic agriculture, returning back to the land, connecting to the energy sources, the natural raw sources of the earth, of Geb, is essential and the most practical solution, because that's what we require to survive. So we have to get back into the depths of what economics actually is: food, clothing, shelter, security, energy. Those are the things that the land, they all come from the land. So if we don't return to the land and learn how to commune with the land, learn how to sustain ourselves on land, we're not going anywhere. You can't have a revolution if you cannot feed the people. You're not worthy of leading people if you cannot feed them, period. Right? That's how you always have collapse, is when the people are not able to be fed, because our leadership paradigm was different. Our accountability to the people, we were servants to the people. That is not the dynamic that we're in right now. Those are not the values that we're embodying right now. Another practical aspect that we could look at our culture for is our culture is our weapon. The same way they're using the music to corrupt our minds and to create sexual deviancy, to create a death culture and murder and all of these toxic things that are now literally fueling the reality that we're creating, because people are constantly streaming and listening to these vibrations.
That's right.
Watching it on TV, literally putting it into their mind's eye. You know, the power of the subconscious. The power of the subconscious is far beyond the power of the conscious mind, because most of our behaviors are happening from our subconscious thoughts and behaviors and programming.
That's right.
So our culture, the tools of our culture, the tools that we can create from our true culture, right? The music we can create, right? The power of that vibration, all of that is very powerful. The dance, the rituals, right? So these are all things that I see as practical solutions. But I feel the most grounded one is agriculture, because the food, the way we nourish ourselves, the way we eat, the way that we create industry, right? All of that I feel is what people think of in terms of changing our material conditions. But it has to be solid at the root, because we can do all these things. We can create institutions, but they might not be revolutionary. We need to make sure they're revolutionary. We need to make sure they're going to the core of the essence of our cosmology, right? Because remember, we're saying culture is going back to the womb, the asili, right? That seed of our culture. We're not talking about the seed that was planted in the corrupt soil. We're talking about the seed, the original nature, right? That cosmic womb. So, yeah, I just wanted to say that. We also had a comment on here that I wanted to comment on before we left, because when you were speaking about the he said they had a purge night, because remember you were telling the story about how they would go and tell the leader all the things they
Yes.
wanted to say about the leader.
Yeah.
And it made me think about something I also want to share with our family that's watching. There's a tradition called Kasala that comes from the Congo. And Kasala is a tradition that I learned about um, from actually Queen Diambi, who was actually one of the queens of the Congo. Um, and she was in New York and I was able to meet her. But anyway, she had taught us about this tradition of Kasala that still exists to this day, where when someone does something like commit a crime,
Yes.
murder, or anything
Yes.
that's unbecoming, instead of
Yes.
locking that person up
Right.
um or kicking them out of the society, the person is brought into the center, and everyone in the village, everyone in the community comes together and surrounds this person and showers the person with praise
Yep.
and reminds the person of who they are. You are the son of or the daughter of
Right.
such and such.
Right.
You are a creative person. You are an artist. It's like all the things that the person is, and that could be their ancestral legacy, to remember where you came from, because why
Right.
you act a fool, or just specifically what that person's purpose is in this life. But just like all the good things about the person, the high frequency, they bombard them with the high frequency to overpower what they had done. And that's so powerful, because when you look at psychologically, like psychotherapy and the way things are done, like, or even when you look at, just the way that people's behavior is part of a continuum, right? The way you're raised as a child begins to create your behavior and how, your attachment styles and different things like that. But when someone does something wrong and you create shame around that thing, you are perpetuating a low frequency, and you're putting that person or yourself in a cycle. And that could be a very dangerous cycle to go into, because shame and guilt are very dangerous and low frequency emotions, like fear and all these other low frequency emotions. So people then begin to recycle those things and identify with those things. So it's very powerful to put that person in the center for the Kasala
I
ceremony
love it.
and remind them of who they are. Because when we go back to our ancient traditions, we didn't have prisons. We didn't need them.
That's right.
Ma'at was inventory that people did on themselves.
That's
We
right.
created that because we needed it. That's very different, because that's coming from our cultural asili. What came from the European cultural asili is to lock people up in cages.
Mm-hmm.
But these are the same people who enslaved people,
Yes.
raped people, who lynched people, castrated them, hung them on trees, took pictures of it, gave them
to people as gifts, took limbs, and we're dealing with a whole different okay.
Yes, ma'am.
So yeah, yeah. I also saw one other comment here from this other, I think it's a brother. Atheism too is heavily attached to scientism and secular humanism. Yes.
Correct. That's right.
This, and this is a very important thing also for us to think about. Thank you for making this comment. Because the agenda really with the technocracy or transhumanism, and the way that, you know, because really the spiritual warfare and the reality of things is we can't look at things as black and white. This is like we have to be far more sophisticated than to just be, oh, it's us against them, because all skin folk are not kinfolk, as we say. And we need to know who are actual allies. But again, you cannot create unity with someone else, right? You don't go to battle APEP, right, with Set if you hadn't put Set in the chokehold first, right? Heru had to battle and avenge his father's death before he could join with his evil uncle who killed his father in order to battle Apep, right? The serpent of darkness, right? The parasite. So that being said, we have to put things in their proper place. It's a war of artificial versus natural. And that energy can take form in any representative.
That's right.
So you have a lot of African people of African descent who are embodying that energy of Set.
Yep.
So we have to be clear that when we're looking at transhumanism, right, merging man and machine, this technology that's destroying nature, built on a foundation of exploitation, literally pulling us into a vortex that is not real. That's what we have to look at. These, yes, this is I'm real. I'm really here. Mama Regina's really there. But this digital world, this two-dimensional thing, they're devolving us, really. Because even the three-dimensional world is a limitation. Because we're talking, what did we just talk about? There's infinite dimensions. So if we get stuck in just the physical reality and only what we can see, now they're bringing us down to two-dimensional where we're looking at a screen where there are people who are connecting with people all across the world, but they can't even open the door and talk to their mother and their father.
That's right.
To the point where they'll go into their bathroom and kill themselves because of something they saw on this motherfucking screen. That's the danger of secular humanism. It's not that anything's wrong with science. Again, it's about the asili, because science is neutral. Science is observation of nature. But we're talking about a culture and a tradition of manipulation and exploitation and egotism, right? And materialism and reductionism to reduce everything down to matter. So we're talking about both and. Yes, we can look at matter, we can look at science, but we're expanding it in the realm of possibilities that are infinite, right? Because that's our cultural legacy. That's our cultural seed. That's our ceiling. So the atheism and to believe in nothing, that's a belief. That's a belief that's an outgrowth of the European cultural asili.
Something else I want to say before I sign off, or we sign off tonight. As I get older, I really listen to what's going on in my body, because I can't treat my body the way that I treated it when I was 20, 30, 40, 50, 60. I can't do that anymore. And I want everybody listening to this, what I'm saying here. When you eat certain foods, they may be fabulous in taste. But if your body tells you, if it stiffens up, if it doesn't move fluidly, then you can't eat that food. Or let me put it like this. You shouldn't eat that food, because with the expansion of diabetes, Lord have mercy, heart disease. I mean, in my car, I see Black people so huge, it breaks my heart. It literally breaks my heart. We are absolutely ingesting too much food, and the food is terrible for us. We have never been this obese. And even if you're not obese, just listen to your body, because it is certain things I've absolutely had to cut out, because I said, all right. I've given it 1, 2, 3, 4 tries. Okay, think, well, maybe it'll be better next time, when I have it. It wasn't. So then I have to make adjustments, because while I am on earth, I want to be healthy. I'll never forget, Neff, when I met Omawale in person. I had been on a show, and it was like this, right? Remote and all like that. I did my thing. We talking, boom, boom, boom. Well, I met him in person. It was in the park. So I'm walking towards him, because I saw him with his group. So I'm walking on toward him. And he's looking at me like this, like I was something other than human. And I said, why are you looking at me like that? You're not on a cane? I was like, no, I'm not on a cane. You can walk, because he knew how old I was, right? So I guess he was expecting me to come up. And look, I ain't laughing at my elders that are on a cane. Regina is not on a cane. And one of my heroes, Ernestine Shepherd, she's 85, and she's a bodybuilder. She done been in competitions all over the world. She's Black. So I'm not a bodybuilder, but I do take some of her tips. Absolutely. So I'm just saying, you want to prepare yourself for the revolution that Neff be talking about, the revolution of today, which combines what the Panthers did with today. You got to be healthy. And even if there are things that you truly, because I've done it, I've had to do it, because it's a certain way that I want to feel. I had to. The universe forced me to just give up on certain things that I thought was so fabulously delicious. Now, maybe I'll have them once or twice a year, but I'm not going to have them as often as I once did.
I wanted to ask you, could you imagine, though, if some brothers that you was with in the Panther Party were obese?
How in the world could we jump from roof to roof? And we did that. The Black Liberation Army brothers, shit, excuse me. When they were being hunted down, they jumped from roof to roof, and many escaped to Africa. So you don't know about these brothers and sisters because they're in exile. Everybody wasn't caught. Everybody wasn't jailed. Know that. And that is because we had to exercise regularly. So when we had to do a split, we didn't even think about it.
Yeah, our health is key. We really have to and we're talking about all levels: your psychological health, your emotional health, your spiritual health. Because if anything could trigger you and you take your own life,
yes,
that's more dangerous than anything. That's the type of warfare that's taking place right now, or literally you neutralizing yourself. It's a lot of brothers and even sisters addicted to these devices, playing video games all day, stuck in their room, on porn, all these different that's the type of health I'm talking about. We need to be sexually healthy and sound. We need to be emotionally healthy and sound. We need to be grounded in reality. And I think connecting with nature is the key to that. We got to get in the real world. We got to see what's actually going on. We can't just be on these devices.
And you know what, Nev? That's why I keep saying I'm leaving, but here I come with something else, because you done said something that triggered me. Look here, people. You ain't supposed to feel good all the time. Stop all that. Sometimes the body's supposed to be a little bit uncomfortable. Let it be uncomfortable. Let it detox. Let it, you ain't supposed to be feeling full and full all of the time. What's wrong with being hungry a little bit?
Yeah.
Letting the
And
body just release.
I'm glad you said that, because when Mama Regina and I met for the first time was actually at Tehuti Ma'at Community Garden, when we did our community ritual called the Pain and Pleasure. And the
Ah,
whole
yeah.
thing is, no, we can't just feel pleasure. We also have to feel pain, because as above, so below, right? Just think about that concept and that symmetry that happens in all things in this realm that we're existing in, the physical world. There's active and receptive energy. Everything's about that electromagnetic flow and current. So you have to have pain to have pleasure. So we can't just try to escape or just constantly be feeling pleasure.
That's right. That's right.
It's just not the reality. You got to have, there's bitter medicines. There's sweet medicines too sometimes, but you got to deal with the bitter. You got to deal with the pain. You got to do the healing. So if you haven't watched our previous episodes, we touched on a lot of this already. So please go back into the archives. In the description, you have the link to the previous episodes that we've had so you can get caught up. And then if you want to support the work that we're doing, the best way to support is to support the work itself. Get involved in the work. Buy Mama Regina's books. Her books are available at apanthersister.com. The link is in the description. Join the Tehuti Ma'at Militia. If you can, donate and make a contribution to the work that we're doing at the very least. If you don't want to get involved, if you just want to be a supporter, if you're not of African descent for whatever reason, because our organization is focused on the resurrection of people of African descent. And that is our primary focus. So we want people to come into the work that we're doing. If you join the militia, there are 3 ranks: the kingdom, the empire, and the galaxy. The kingdom rank is the best rank for people who are just in their healing journey or just want to support what we're doing. You can make a contribution of any amount, but the minimum we ask for is $22 a month. And then the Empire rank really brings you into our workshops, our classes, our events. At the Kingdom rank, you also get access to the ARC, the Amos Wilson Collective, or the African Rehabilitation Center. That's our private server. So you get to do the different chats. You get to come to our exclusive community gatherings. Every month we do a healing cipher. Everything we do is co-ed as well. So I just wanted to say that it's a collaboration with the African War College. We also have our Community Connect and our Warrior workouts every month. And everyone in the militia gets access to that. We put out a monthly report. It has just the energy reading for the month and what's going on. And then we also have our workshops and classes. Like I said, that's for the Empire rank. You get access to like the retrograde guide, different guidebooks and things like that. And the galaxy rank is if you want to be a contributor, if you want to be part of creating, co-creating these cooperative institutions, if you are an entrepreneur, a business owner, you have an organization and you want to integrate into our solar system, then that rank is really for leaders. And that rank goes through the initiation process of navigating eternity, our holistic energy management system, which literally Ra orients us out of linear time and the European time paradigm into cosmic cycles that we've honored ancestrally and throughout eternity. So if you want information about any of that, you can reach out to us via email as well. So I'll actually go ahead and just put the email grow@tehutimaat.org. You can also text us at 646-883-MAAT. All right. And thank you to everyone who's been here with us live. Thank you to everyone who posted.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you.
We appreciate your energy. And for those of you who are watching the raw play, thank you too for staying through all the way to the end. And we hope to catch you live as well. We'll be back here on Tuesday at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. Thank you again, Mama Regina.
All right, sweetheart.
All right, Murray, power.